Hi everyone, welcome to the Psychology of Dating podcast. You are listening to Nadine Newkirk. I am both a clinical psychologist and a dating coach. For today's podcast episode, I want to talk about things I learnt dating in COVID lockdown and how this applies to being your authentic self in dating. So just like the rest of the world, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we had lockdown in Sydney. So this meant we could only go a certain radius, 5 kilometres from our home, and then we couldn't do our usual work commitments. We had to, do it from Zoom or from home. And lockdown, of course, changed dating, that there was physical distance requirements when you met someone. So I was living by the beaches in Sydney, very lucky to have that in my 5 kilometre radius, and dating changed for me. I started doing video dates more frequently. I started to do walking dates, going by the ocean or in a park, tennis dates. It was kind of new and creative ways to do them. And I found that this actually helped me be more of my authentic self. What do we mean by that? So when we're authentic, we're more connected with our intrinsic values and goals. So that would be, your values and goals in dating as well. For me, I really value being active, nature, honest communication, humor, having silly jokes, kindness. And I found that prior to COVID lockdown, I was doing a lot of drinking dates, meet up with someone, go to a bar. That's kind of the standard thing you think of when you think of a date. But for me, I like having a drink, on weekends or things like that, or social occasions, but I don't actually drink that much during the week. And that was going against my values, to be having a couple of drinks and then I still feel that the next morning I love to get up early, go for a run. And it did make me feel a little bit more confident drinking on the dates, but it also gave a false sense of connection sometimes. So there was one person that I was dating before lockdown. We went on a couple of dates, both drinking dates, and it seemed like we had a connection, banter, humor, things like that. And then we went on a date a little bit later after the lockdown had happened and, we're doing physical distancing. It was a date outdoors, had some food on a park bench, and it was so awkward. When the alcohol was removed, and I know someone, one of my friend's dads calls it social lubricant. When that was removed, we didn't actually have that authentic connection there that the alcohol was kind of masking at. And it was actually refreshing to have that awkward date, because then I could very clearly know, okay, this is actually a no for this connection, rather than continuing several dates in and then realizing. And you might think, oh, it's just, a few dates or a few weeks or a few months with someone, but this all adds up. If you really know where you're heading and what you want in dating, it expends a lot of time and energy to be going on these kind of false starts when you could have known earlier on. This can lead to dating burnout. So it helped me align with my values and do dates that were more authentic to something that I enjoyed, and be able to show my true self rather than masking it with something like alcohol. And the more I was myself, the more I had confidence to show up as myself for the next date. It takes practice to do this. That self-esteem, confidence, sometimes people think, what's that one magic thing I do to get that? But self-esteem and confidence are more like a shadow that follows you. The more you do something, the more you build that skill, the more you gain momentum, then those things show up. Being authentic also means being honest. This includes boundary setting. So knowing your limits and what you feel comfortable with or what you don't feel comfortable with someone, and speaking up when your comfort level has been breached. It means embracing and being honest about your true self, imperfections, the beautiful things, the difficult things, the great things about your personality. Everyone is unique, And sometimes we think we need to show this really shiny, packaged self to people on new dates. But people find connection from the humanness of someone, from their true character. Do you have a friend that has quirks, but you also love them for those quirks? Or maybe there's things that are annoying or frustrating, but in the whole of them being them, it is worth it being their friend. That if you tried to change one of their characteristics, it means you would change all of them, and that's not what we want. You might have noticed listening to this podcast, I can stumble over my words, and sometimes I get the sentence structure a little bit wrong. English is my native language, but when I get excited, that's just kind of what I do, what my brain does. Or sometimes I can feel a bit awkward in social situations, a bit of a goof has been described. And that's okay. It's also about the way you think about these quirks. You could have 100 people lined up and 50% would say, oh, you're so awkward or goofy, can't stand it, don't want to be friends with you. You might have another 50% say, that's kind of funny and endearing and cute. And it's not that something is wrong, it's more about finding the right connections where someone embraces the true you, all of you. Because at the end of the day, if you're searching for a long-term connection or wanting to feel that contentment, that fulfillment, it's going to come out anyway. And it's much easier if we can show up as our true selves at the beginning of dates, because then we can connect with people who match that rather than showing up as this fine, shiny kind of false self and connecting with people where we wouldn't actually want to keep them around anyway. And then the last thing to think about with authenticity is vulnerability. It can be really scary to show our true selves, to speak up and say what we want. If you know you love babies or kids and you want them to really speak about that with passion, but you're afraid that someone might get a bit tense if they don't want kids, or they're like, oh, this is a lot. But really that's about them. And being vulnerable is willing to experience some uncomfortable emotions so you can then have true connections with people, rather than hiding parts of yourself to try and stay safe and then not actually feeling connected. Because in the long run, that doesn't feel good either. So it's a willingness to feel the full wheel of emotions that come up in dating. So in sum, in COVID lockdown, I learnt about being my authentic self because I could connect to my values, actually doing types of dates and activities that more aligned with who I was and what I like to do. I was able to not use alcohol on dates and therefore show more of my personality or more clearly see if the connection was right. And at the same time, I was also seeing a coach, so practicing boundary setting, being vulnerable, figuring out what my goals were in dating. If you would like some help in figuring out your goals, of knowing how to get there and having some tools and skills to make your journey a little bit smoother, then my online coaching program might be helpful for you. It incorporates psychology tools from the therapies of CBT and DBT to navigate the early stages of dating. So this includes managing our own emotions and mindset and thoughts. That is 50% of dating. And then also being able to navigate creating dates, online dating, speaking up for yourself, setting boundaries, managing anxiety, understanding triggers from past relationships, and common circumstances that come up in dating like sex and dating. If you would like more information on the program, it involves group sessions and individual sessions, and it goes for 3 months. It's online, and you can find a link to that in the episode show notes. You can also find my free guide on top 3 mindset shifts in dating in the episode show notes as well. Okay, everyone, have a lovely day or night wherever you are, and I'll speak with you next week.